With all the rumors floating around day in, day out, I thought that we would just start with everything as a whole with the latest on the starting pitching market. Now, last week after Yoshinobu Yamamoto signed with the Dodgers, the Mets were reportedly not expected to pivot to high-end options such as Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery. As reported, free agency target Lucas Giolito ended up signing with Boston this week on a 2-year, $38.5 million contract after the Mets were reportedly very aggressive in trying to ink Giolito as a fallback option. As other free agent options dwindle, with pitchers like Frankie Montas signing with the Reds, Martin Perez signing with the Pirates, the Mets' current course to fill a very thin rotation remains unclear. As for available arms, Mike Puma of the New York Post reported that there is a strong possibility the Mets could employ a 6-man rotation, linking the Mets to Tier 2 to Tier 3 free agents, such as Sean Manaea, Michael Lorenzen, among others. The Mets' rotational depth chart currently stands with breakout ace Kodai Senga at the top, joined by contact managing lefty Jose Quintana, hard-throwing right-hander Luis Severino, and newly acquired pitcher from Milwaukee, Adrian Hauser. The rest of the in-house options include Joey Lucchesi, Tylor McGill, Jose Budo, with lefty David Peterson expected to be on the shelf for the first few months of the 2024 season.
You look at the options, it's a lot of dog doo-doo. I mean, there's bunches, 4s and 5s. I mean, you didn't want to jump the market. And again, this was a pitching market that was, again, kind of Yamamoto, Monty, Snell, and then just, I mean, you got the Iguana dude, which, again, you could go that route. But, again, if you went the 5, again, let's say it's a Senga deal, similar 5 years, $75 million. To get the unproven guy, I'd just rather spend more on Monty, but that's me. But, again, Lorenzen's fine. Brandon Woodruff, how the hell is this guy not signed? Like, if this year does not matter, why the hell is Brandon Woodruff not inked to a 2-year, 3-year with mutual options and all that? What the hell are we waiting for? It makes so much sense. He's the best option. And like everyone seems, we don't know what the hell this year is. Why not go into next year knowing Senga, you would have obviously a couple of free agents, but then having Woodruff, having a nice 1-2, going into that offseason with where you can find your ace on the market, protect yourself in 2025. But of the options, especially, we're not trading for rentals, so that takes off a few guys, and they're just not going to make any trades, which there's a certain team that I would be on the phone with right now. Maybe we'll get to them in the next segment. But of the free agent arms, I mean, injury risks, domestic abusers, just BP throwers. I mean, it's garbage. You're picking through, James Paxton's fine, but can he stay healthy? Lorenzen's a solid innings eater. Would I hate that? No. But then you get, Manaea, who's coming off bad years. Yes, he's had some decent years in Oakland, but ever since he's left Oakland, hasn't been kind of the same pitcher. He's working with drive on. Let's see we'll see what happens. Again, Alex Wood. Like, again, it's not sexy, and, they're not going to trade prospects. So these are the kind of guys you're looking at, and it's not good. And we kind of knew going into the offseason, if you weren't going after the top of the market, the rest of the market wasn't great, especially if you're not going in that trade market, which this team is just afraid to not move assets for term, which there are some guys with term. Maybe I'll let Frank go, and then maybe we'll make that discussion, but they don't seem to be wanting to make a trade.
I totally agree. There isn't too much to be excited about. There is risk. I mean, you could say, oh, well, Blake Snell, there's a guy, they won Cy Young, things like that. I mean, it doesn't matter for 1 year if the years before that were very suspect and very inconsistent. I mean, you can't just say, oh, if the guy was great 1 year, he's automatically going to be good the next year when he doesn't have that proven track record of doing it year after year. And none of these guys have that. I mean, we've seen all these guys have their struggles in the past few years. And some of the guys that are decent, they have that injury risk. Like I said, if Brandon Woodruff was fully healthy, first of all, I don't think the Mets would even really be that in on him, because I feel like so many other teams would be like, okay, this is a much more high-end pitcher with a more proven track record that they'd be willing to shell out that big money. So since he doesn't help you this year, you really are looking at, like we call them, more reclamation projects, more guys that, oh, well, we could try to find something. They're coming off bad years, but you can maybe get back on track. And the guy, that really stands out, someone like Sean Manaea, you're like, I'm sure you're going up the bad years, hoping they can kind of get him to turn around, because other than that, a lot of these guys, they just haven't been great lately. And that's why it's kind of, you do lean more towards the guys like Shota Imanaga and guys like that, because you're like, what these other guys are that are from the major leagues. They're not great. So you might as well possibly take a chance with those other guys who are, you don't know. because with these guys, you kind of know what you're going to get for a majority of them, especially with their age. You know they're not getting better. So for that sake, like as much as we liked Rich Hill, you're not signing a 44-year-old guy. At least I would hope not, because we've seen how that goes. Same like them not bringing back Carlos Carrasco. You're not going to bring in Kluber. You just look at down the line. So many of these guys really up there in age. And what I find so interesting is that they say, okay, we want to do a 6-man rotation. And my thing is, okay, I'm all good at 6-man rotation, but you need 6 good arms. They don't even have 5 good arms right now. So before you worry about let's do a 6-man rotation, how about let's do a 5-man rotation first? Let's get that sorted out. If you could do that and figure that out, then okay, then we can explore the 6-man. And I agree that it's much more appealing for me in the trade market. And again, I don't want them to settle for guys who just aren't that great and guys that aren't a good fit for their timeline. And just because you don't get Yamamoto, you shouldn't force yourself to pick someone you're not crazy about. I feel like if you've built up a pretty good farm system, it's improving. And, a lot of these guys, like we've talked about, they play the same positions of players that you already have. They're not all going to play. They're not all going to be amazing. They're not all going to stick. So if you want to get some of the pitchers you'll like from Seattle, Dylan Cease from Chicago, I've talked about Corbin Burns, I'd rather go for something like that. At least I know I'm getting guys that I could trust compared to, let me shell out 6 years to Blake Snell and then he starts walking barriers again and he's not the same pitcher that he was this past year. I just don't think it's worth that risk. You're taking a risk regardless, whether you want to give up prospects or you want to sign guys who have inconsistencies and things like that. I just don't think it's worth it right now. And it just thinks that it was such a top-heavy market where if you did not get Yamamoto, this is what you're faced with. And we kind of knew that, but it's just a tough year that they're looking at right now with the class.
Well, I mean, I look at this Mets rotation right now. It seems like they just have like these limited options of somebody that you can actually trust in a playoff series. At this pace that they're going, like we don't really know if they are going to be able to contend against some of these other teams anyway. So it's not really one of my biggest concerns right now. I want the Mets to do a 6-man rotation. I know that they are going to do a 6-man rotation because I just looked it up while you guys were talking at the beginning. Since 2015, since David Stearns was their general manager / president of baseball operations, excluding 2020, different story, David Stearns has implemented a 6-man rotation with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, but we don't have Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley, pitcher after pitcher.
I'm aware of that, but they need to approach it with quantity anyway. We're not
the Brewers. That's the thing that drives me nuts. Just because Stearns is here does not automatically mean you're Milwaukee. That's the thing that really drives me insane. We're not. I hope that all of a sudden we have amazing pitching, but I hate that. That's like, we did it here, so now we have to do it over there.
What I'm saying is that you can't exclude the James Paxton, you can't exclude the Luis Severino, you can't exclude the Sean Manaea when he's been able to give pitcher consistency to guys who are in a 6-man rotation. Like the health should not be something that you worry about in a 6-man rotation. That's not a big factor. The struggles you have, again, it's that extra day that has always been a huge factor of gaining these consistencies in these pitchers. And when you look at some of these Milwaukee rotations, ever since 2015 when Stearns was there, every single one of them were making 15 plus starts a year. Like the least amount every single year was their 6-man in the rotation, who maybe they skipped a day, who made 18 or 19 starts. I think what the Mets really need to look at, because of how much of a problem it was last year, somebody who can go out there every week, every 6 days, and you don't have any injury problems.
That guy was Lucas Giolito, and he went to Boston for a very reasonable deal. You can say what you want about Giolito. Yes, didn't have a good year. This guy's making the start.
No, I would have done that too. I'm not disagreeing at all.
So that's what I don't get is that, like, okay, here was an option that you need to pay 5 years, 6 years for, and he fits your idea, of a 6-man rotation, and they don't do it for a reasonable contract.
There is a possibility that Lucas Giolito went up to them and said, I want to pitch every 5 days. There's a possibility that happened because he wants to get his value up. I'd say that this works a little bit more with implementing lefties a little bit more, because like lefties are kind of like these spotty 5 to 6 inning type of guys. Typically, you can put them in every 6 days, but like I tweeted out like a yes list for starting pitching, and obviously Shota Imanaga's there. Brandon Woodruff, I do that. Sean Manaea, Alex Wood, Michael Lorenzen, Spencer Turnbull, James Paxton, Brad Keller, and Vince Velasquez. Those are like the main yes guys that I would like to see the Mets add. If they could add 3 of those guys, like these are the types of guys every single 6 days, you can keep them healthy, you can utilize their talents and assess talent. And that's something that David Stearns is known to do. He doesn't go after the flashy name just to be a flashy name. Like he ain't going to pivot to Blake Snell and shove 6 years in his face or shove 8 years at him like I think the Angels are going to do with Blake Snell. You know, he's not going to go after the guy like Jordan Montgomery. He's going to go after the guy with actual tools for success. It may not be flashy. It may not be a nice ERA. The way that he's been able to implement this and given that consistency is with a 6-man rotation. There's a possibility that that could happen. So if you get a few mediocre arms and they become above average with the Mets, it's a good value deal. Number 1 guy available right now who's not Blake Snell or Montgomery, who would you go for?
Sean Manaea, because he is left-handed, because he is younger than a majority of these guys, and he, like we said, he had some good years, but it just worries me that these past 2 years have not been good. So if he really believes in Jeremy Hefner, if David Stearns really could, find something, get him back on track, then sure. But other than that, again, a lot of these guys, they're just not amazing to me. I think a lot of them, they either have injury risk, they have age risk, or just haven't been great lately. Or, again, it's like that off the field stuff. Guy like Mike Clevenger, we saw what happened with Julio Urias. We know what happened with Marcus Stroman. Like they all have something else, that doesn't have to do with performance, but still, it's a matter of like clubhouse, not getting in trouble or whatever, having any drama. Like when it comes to New York, that stuff, it really amplifies. It really can stand out. You have a much better chance of having something like that happen. So those guys you got to stay away from. And again, Zach Greinke, 40 years old. Like, again, a lot of these guys, it's just not a fit. It really is. And Clayton Kershaw, he's going back to the Dodgers at some point. So it's like he's not even really out there, so it just limits them so much. It's ridiculous. And the fact that Woodruff can't pitch this year too, like it's just, again, there's like everyone has something attached to them as to why they're not like a perfect fit.
Yeah, and again, that's the thing. You can limit the quality with just a bunch of like you can turn like one quality arm. Like we're looking at one quality arm in Blake Snell, where you can bring that money and bring in 2 being Sean Manaea and Michael Lorenzen. Like you can do that. You can utilize that in the quantity position. Like, yeah, they don't have the best numbers recently, but they do have the tools that can help you to succeed. Every single one of those guys that I listed like a minute ago are all like guys who can give you a recipe for success, to get you strikeouts, to get you ground balls, to get you those outs that the Rays always talk about, just getting the outs instead of innings. How they can patch that together is with the quantity. And I really say that it's just a perfect scenario here to be in a 6-man rotation, because I just want to see 1 year where the rotation is healthy and we have 5 or 6 pitchers and we don't have to worry about, okay, who's pitching today? Who's pitching? Who's going on the mound? Who are we plugging in this time? Because there's always a spot that was missing. Like there's always a spot that's empty. And they're like, okay, we got to plug this guy in. We got to plug this guy in. We got to sign this guy. We got to trade for this guy. I just want 6 men in a rotation that stay healthy with the extra day of rest. And that's it. Knowing the Mets, they probably still will have injuries in a 6-man rotation. That's their thing. It's been proven to give you at least 20 starts from 6 different.
If that's the case, the first pitcher you pick up should not be Luis Severino, who may have as many injury problems.
Actually, it should be. I'll tell you why. Because he gets the extra day of rest. Because he has the injury history. Get the extra day. Of course, there's other things you gotta have to bring in, like guys who need to bounce back, guys who have the injury history. Like how I see it from a 6-man rotation, you get that consistency. How I see it is you get your 2 ERA guy from the top, who's your ace in Kodai Senga, who they already have plugged in here. Your 2 3 to 3.5s, and then the rest of them are 4. If you can get a sub 4, a 4.5 from the bottom half of a 6-man rotation, that can give you enough consistency to not tax out your bullpen, and they all get an extra day of rest. we see this bullpen right now. Again, another piece to this thing. We'll get into that. There's a few weapons there, but you want to see an extra day of rest where some of these guys can like continue 6 innings when they typically give you 4. Like if you can get six innings every 6 days instead of 5 innings every 5 days, that's what I'm going to go for. And when you have the top of your rotation, it's Kodai Senga, who's used to pitching once every week. Like I'm all for that. Like I want to keep my ace comfortable. Like I'm not trying to kill him like we almost did with Jacob deGrom. I'm not trying to kill him like we did with Noah Syndergaard. I'm not trying to almost kill him like we did with Zach Wheeler, or completely kill him like we did with Matt Harvey. Like I think it's more of a PTSD of like that 5-man rotation not having, like just having one time through that.
They did a 6-man at one point though, and it was brief.
It wasn't consistent though. That's the thing. Yeah.
I think that if the 6-man, if it was as much I wouldn't say guarantee, but if it had a higher probability of all your guys making it through, I think it'd be more prevalent than we see it right now.
It also gives you one less spot in the bullpen that Drew Smith could possibly be in for most of the year. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm all for that. I mean, yeah, sign me up for
if you get like from what I've seen, like the pitching just never seemed to be the problem with any of these 6-man rotations that were under Stearns. So it has a proven track record of being consistent. Now, listen, we all know that the Mets are the ones that defy all statistics. You know, you got to try something at one point when we all know that, yeah, the pitching consistency, the pitching development's always been a problem. But we all know that the health is one of the biggest problems that they've had for a long time. We saw it firsthand with that young rotation when they came up through the majors, and it just all dismantled 1 year at a time. Now they're all gone, and you now start off from scratch with, of course, Kodai Senga at the top. This is the perfect position to do a 6-man rotation. That's why I think that bringing in a few guys who had a 5 ERA last year, I don't think that that's something that you can just completely negate unless they're just not that good at all. But what I've seen so far from all the pitching additions that Stearns have made, they all have tools that can be a recipe for success. We just have to see him do that here first. But there hasn't been a single addition he's made so far that I'm like, what the hell is this for? Like, what are we doing here? Like, there's always something that some of these arms have that I'm okay with. Like, I'm okay with them adding them on a minor league contract. I'm okay with them on a 1-year deal. You know, we'll see what they do with this, because there still is a lot of spots. I don't want to see, you know, the in-house depth that you look at right now with Jose Budo and, you know, Joey Lucchesi. Like, I don't want to see that on the opening day roster. If you have your injuries, you have your injuries, but hasn't really been proven to have that many injuries in a 6-man rotation. And that's what I really think that the Mets need right now, especially with unproven pitching prospects and, you know, just depth options that are just not that good.